In 1964, the U.S. government constructed a full-scale American town in the Arizona desert, complete with homes, diners, working streetlights, and a radio station that never signed off. It was never meant for the public to see. The project was classified, the experiment canceled, and the town left to rot. But earlier this year, a group of satellite engineers picked up a transmission from the site, still broadcasting, almost 60 years later. The voice on the signal wasn't in any known language. I work for a satellite telemetry contractor, mostly boring stuff, data relay, frequency tracking. A few months ago, I was running a diagnostic scan on legacy comms bands, stuff nobody really touches anymore, when I picked up a transmission that didn't make sense. It was broadcasting on a Cold War-era UHF frequency, something phased out decades ago. The signal was faint, but consistent, a kind of pulse loop with what sounded like distorted numbers and static. At first, I figured it was just interference bouncing off the ionosphere. That happens more than you'd think. But when I cleaned up the audio, something weird came through. It sounded human, like a voice trying to speak, but chopped up, like a tape loop that had degraded over time. Not English, not Russian either, just syllables, fragmented, mechanical. I pulled the origin metadata, assuming it was bouncing off old military relay stations, but there wasn't a relay. The signal was coming from the middle of the Arizona desert, not a town, not a military base, just an empty stretch of federal land. I marked the coordinates, figuring I'd circle back to it later. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about the cadence of the voice didn't feel random. It was like it was trying to say something, but couldn't quite get there. I played the cleaned up file again and again. On the 6th or 7th pass, I swear it sounded like it said, "Return." The next day, I brought it to my supervisor. He barely looked at it before saying, "Old test signals, not your lane. Drop it." That's when I knew it was something real. He didn't even ask how I found it. I started digging on my own time. Public records, Cold War archives, old nuclear testing logs. Took a few nights, but I found a single document, heavily redacted, referencing Project LIMINAR. No description, just a name, a date, 1964, and a label. Site prepared, non-active. No detonation records, no closure order. It was like they built something and then just left it. I overlaid the signal's coordinates onto a 1960s test map. The point lined up with a designated nuclear test grid, but there's no crater, no burn pattern, nothing. Satellite imagery just shows flat desert. And yet, the signal hasn't stopped. It's still broadcasting. It's been 58 years. That's when I made a choice. Not a smart one, but one I couldn't let go of. I packed a recorder, a Geiger counter, and a 4K drone, and I drove out to see what was out there. Whatever Project LIMINAR was, someone built it, and it's still talking. I drove 6 hours into the Arizona desert, following coordinates that shouldn't have existed. When the road ended, I kept going on foot. No signs, no fences, just empty sand and heat distortion in the distance. Then I saw it. It looked like a film set, a full town from the 1960s, just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. Houses with white picket fences, a diner with a chrome sign, a small post office, even a school. Everything perfectly placed, perfectly still. No signs of life, no tracks in the sand. But it didn't feel abandoned. It felt staged, like it was meant to be seen, just not by people anymore. I walked down the main street, filming everything. The buildings weren't fake, real wood, real concrete. A few windows were shattered from age, but most were intact. Inside the diner, I found booths with plates still set, plastic food untouched, mannequins sitting at the tables, frozen mid-meal. One of them had a fork halfway to its mouth. The jukebox in the corner was glowing faintly. I didn't touch it, but it clicked every few seconds, like it was trying to pick a song but couldn't. The radio on the counter was still powered, or maybe it never needed power. It was buzzing with faint static, then a low hum, then a voice, broken, glitched. It said something that sounded like, "Come in," but it didn't sound like an invitation. I stepped back and nearly tripped over another mannequin that hadn't been there before. I hadn't seen it when I walked in. It was facing the window now, its hand against the glass. I left the diner fast and went into the school across the street. The hallway was lined with lockers, all sealed shut. A faint smell of ammonia hung in the air, too clean for a place that was supposed to be abandoned. In one classroom, children-sized mannequins were seated at desks, facing a chalkboard. The board had writing on it, red chalk scribbles that made no sense at first. But when I looked closer, I saw they were phonetic spellings of English words, like someone or something was trying to learn the language from the outside in. What is your name? When do you return? In the principal's office, I found a metal cabinet with old reel-to-reel tapes labeled "Do Not Play." One was half-loaded already, so I played it. At first, it was the same static as the signal from before. Then a voice, the same pattern, the same tone. Only this time, it started shifting. It bent into English. Slowly. We are still here. We remember. We wait for your return. Then I heard something behind me. Just a soft shuffle. I turned around. One of the hallway mannequins was standing in the doorway, and I swear, it had moved closer. I backed out of the office slowly, trying not to look directly at the mannequin. It wasn't moving, but it felt like it could, like it was waiting for something, like it needed permission. Outside, the town was different. The sky had gone gray, not like a storm, more like the light itself had dimmed. The shadows weren't falling in the right direction anymore. My drone was still in the air, circling above. On the live feed, I saw something that made my stomach turn. From above, the town formed a perfect geometric pattern. Too clean, too intentional. A symbol, some kind of sigil. Not natural, not human. I started walking fast, trying to get back to where I'd parked, but the road was gone. There was only sand in every direction. No tire tracks, no footprints. My GPS just blinked red. Signal lost. Then I saw the figures. Dozens of mannequins now, standing at the edges of the buildings, all facing me. They hadn't moved, not physically, but somehow they were closer. I broke into a run. I didn't know where I was going, just away. But every corner I turned brought me deeper into the grid. The streets were shifting. What had been a diner was now a barbershop. The school was gone. Buildings were rearranging themselves, or I was slipping between layers, like the town was rebuilding itself as I moved through it. I ducked into a house and slammed the door. Silence. The air was warm, like someone had just left. I went to the window. They were standing across the street now, lined up, waiting. The radio in the kitchen turned on by itself. This time, the voice was clear. Liminar was never a test. It was a gate. You came back. We remember. And then I understood. It wasn't a town. It was a container. Not for people, for something else. Project LIMINAR hadn't been shut down. It had activated. Something from outside had answered a signal in 1964, And when they couldn't close the gate, they froze the town, froze time itself, locked it in a liminal state, a forever in between, until someone came back to trigger it. That was me. I ran again. No plan, just desperation. My recorder was still running. I said my name into it, my coordinates, in case someone ever found it. I yelled into the mic, "You have to shut it down, burn it, don't let it open again." And then I saw them. Not mannequins now, but figures. Still. Watching. Listening. The last thing I remember was the sky breaking apart. Not clouds, but like glass shattering behind the sun. A humming noise so deep it shook my teeth, then static. What you heard tonight, it's just one of many. Subscribe to Hauntica for stories that shouldn't exist.